Captain Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars through the main screen. 300 years had passed since humans first met other alien races. In that time, Earth's children had spread across the galaxy, building homes on distant worlds and making friends with many different species. The humans had earned respect through their actions. When the Void Wars broke out between the spider-like arachnids and the crystal beings called the Geometrics, human ships had fought alongside both sides to bring peace. When plague struck the peaceful mollusk worlds, human doctors worked day and night to save millions of lives. The galaxy knew humans as fierce warriors, but also as protectors of the innocent. Kim Tae-ho had seen many battles in his 40 years of life. His dark hair now showed gray at the temples, and his face carried the lines of someone who had made hard choices. But today felt different. Today, something was wrong. The communication system buzzed to life. Dr. Park So-min, the ship's science officer, appeared on the screen. Her usually calm face looked worried. "Captain, we're getting strange signals from New Busan. The colony stopped responding to our calls 3 hours ago." New Busan was one of Earth's farming worlds. Over 2 million humans lived there, growing food for dozens of other colonies. It was a peaceful place where children played in fields of Earth crops under an alien sun. "Set course for New Busan," Kim Tae-ho ordered. "Best speed." As the Defiant jumped through space, Kim Tae-ho thought about the message that had reached Earth just days before. The Krill hegemony, a new military empire, had demanded that humans give them 3 colony worlds as payment for protection. The idea was laughable. Humans had protected themselves and others for centuries. They needed no protection from anyone. President Yoon Hana had sent a simple reply. No. The hegemony had not taken the rejection well. Their leader, Supreme Commander Vorthak, had promised that humans would learn to respect hegemony power. But no one expected them to attack civilians. When the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace near New Busan, Kim Tae-ho felt his blood turn cold. The orbital defense platforms that should have greeted them were gone. Pieces of metal and plastic floated in space where proud human structures once stood. "Captain," called Lieutenant Choi Da-eun from the pilot's station, "I'm reading massive energy weapon strikes on the planet's surface. Multiple cities show no life signs." Dr. Park So-min's voice shook as she reported her findings. "Captain, I'm detecting hegemony ship signatures in the debris. They used military-grade plasma weapons on civilian targets." Kim Tae-ho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they held a coldness that his crew had never seen before. "Take us down, I want to see what they did." The Defiant descended through New Busan's atmosphere. Below them, what had once been the thriving city of New Seoul was now a crater of melted glass and twisted metal. The farming communities that had fed millions were burned wastelands. Emergency beacons called out from a few scattered locations, but they were so few. Commander Lee Jae-wook, Kim Tae-ho's second-in-command, stood beside his captain as they surveyed the destruction. Lee was younger than Kim, but he had seen enough war to understand what this meant. "Captain, this wasn't a military strike. This was murder." Dr. Park So-min's team worked frantically in the ruins, looking for survivors. What they found made even veteran soldiers sick. The hegemony forces had not simply destroyed the cities. They had hunted down fleeing civilians. They had targeted schools and hospitals. They had made sure that children died slowly. "Captain," Dr. Park So-min's voice came over the radio. "You need to see this." Kim Tae-ho found her in what had been a school. On the wall, burned into the metal with precise laser cuts, were words in perfect human writing. "Earth will learn to kneel." As rescue teams worked to save the few thousand survivors they could find, another ship appeared in orbit. It was unlike any vessel in known space, organic-looking, with insect-like curves and movements. Kim Tae-ho had seen such ships only in historical records. The alien being who appeared on their communication screen was Elder Quindar of the Keeper species. The Keepers were among the oldest races in the galaxy, ancient beings who remembered when the first spacefaring civilizations met each other. Captain Kim Tae-ho, the insect-like alien, spoke in perfect human language. I break ancient protocol to speak with you directly. The Krill hegemony has made a terrible mistake. Elder Quindar, Kim Tae-ho replied. The hegemony has committed mass murder against human civilians. This is a matter for human justice now. The ancient alien's compound eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. Captain, there is something your people must understand. For over 1,000 years, the elder species have followed an unwritten rule. We taught it to each new race that joined the galactic community. The rule was simple. Never wage total war against the Earthborn. Kim Tae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. Why? Because in all our studies of your species, we learned something that frightened us. Humans are the only intelligent race we have encountered that does not know how to surrender. When threatened with extinction, other species submit. Humans adapt, innovate, and escalate until the threat no longer exists. The Elder's words hung in the air like a death sentence. The hegemony is young. They dismissed our warnings as primitive superstition. They believe that all species fight as they do for territory, for resources, for dominance. They do not understand that humans fight for something different. What do we fight for? Kim Tae-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. For the right to exist. For the safety of your children. For principles that you would rather die than abandon. The hegemony has not started a territorial war, Captain. They have started a war of extinction. And humans, the Elder paused. Humans have never lost a war of extinction. Back on Earth, President Yoon Hana received the reports from New Busan. She was a small woman with kind eyes, known for her gentle approach to diplomacy. But as she read the details of what the hegemony had done to human children, something changed in her expression. She called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to hear her words. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured. But every alien in the chamber felt an instinctive fear they could not explain. For 300 years, we have offered you our friendship, she said. We have shed our blood in your wars. We have shared our technology, our medicine, our food. We have asked for nothing but the right to exist in peace. She paused, looking at each alien representative in turn. The Krill hegemony has decided that human children are acceptable targets. They have chosen to test whether our kindness comes from weakness. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were ice. They will learn that it does not. The chamber fell silent. Even the hegemony's few allies seemed to shrink in their seats. We gave you our friendship when we could have taken your worlds. We offered our protection when we could have demanded your submission. You have made the mistake of thinking our mercy was weakness. President Yoon Hana stood, and every being in the chamber felt the weight of her words. You will learn the difference. Admiral Song Woo-bin stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching as thousands of ships began arriving from across human space. He was a tall man with steady hands and eyes that had seen too many battles. Today, those eyes held a light that made even his own officers nervous. The call had gone out across all human colonies within hours of the New Busan massacre. 3 simple words. Total mobilization protocol. It was something humanity had not used since the ancient wars on Earth itself, back when humans fought only against each other. Civilian cargo ships were already being converted into troop transports. Mining vessels received new weapon systems. Even luxury cruise liners found themselves fitted with military-grade shields and communications equipment. Every human who could hold a weapon or pilot a ship was being called home. Dr. Park So-min worked in her laboratory aboard the research station, her hands shaking as she analyzed data from New Busan. She had found something in the rubble that made her sick with rage. The hegemony had not just killed civilians. They had studied how long it took different humans to die from their weapons. They had treated human children like test subjects. Admiral, she called Song Woo-bin on the communication system. I've found evidence that this was planned as an experiment. They wanted to see how humans would react to the mass murder of innocents. Song Woo-bin's jaw tightened. Then we'll give them the reaction they deserve. Commander Lee Jae-wook had been given command of the 1st Strike Force. 12 ships loaded with humanity's best soldiers and newest weapons. His target was a hegemony supply depot in the neutral zone, a facility that supported their expansion into human space. As his ships approached the depot, Lee broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Commander Lee Jae-wook of the Human Defense Force. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally." The hegemony commander's response was laughter. "Humans, you think 12 ships can challenge the might of the Krill hegemony? We have 50 vessels defending this position." Lee's reply was simple. 50 ships. Noted. What happened next shocked every alien observer. Human ships did not engage in the traditional battle that other species expected. Instead, they seemed to disappear and reappear at will, striking with perfect precision before vanishing again. Within 20 minutes, 47 hegemony ships were destroyed, but Lee's forces did not stop there. They hunted down every escape pod, every survivor. The few hegemony soldiers who lived were brought aboard human ships, not for mercy, but for questioning. The humans extracted every piece of information about hegemony military plans, their weaknesses, their fears. When they were done, they released one survivor to carry a message back to the hegemony. "Remember New Busan." Engineer Han Yu-jin had been working on something new in the depths of Earth's military research facilities. She was young for such important work, but her mind understood technology in ways that amazed even other humans. What she created would become known as fear broadcasts. Han Yu-jin had found a way to hack into hegemony communication systems. Instead of stealing information, she sent them something much worse: recordings from New Busan, the sounds of children calling for their parents, the last words of teachers who died protecting their students. These recordings were mixed with something that surprised alien analysts: human war music. The psychological effect on hegemony forces was devastating. Species across the galaxy listened to these broadcasts and felt a chill they could not explain. Humans had learned to weaponize their own grief, their own rage, their own memories of loss. Supreme Commander Vorthak sat in his command ship, reviewing battle reports that made no sense to him. His forces were not just losing, they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to fight by completely different rules. "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "our commanders are requesting permission to withdraw. They say the humans fight like madmen." Vorthak slammed his fist on the command table. "Impossible! We have superior numbers, superior weapons. How can these soft mammals defeat the Krill hegemony?" But even as he spoke, another report came in. A human strike force had appeared in the middle of 3 different hegemony systems simultaneously. Instead of attacking military targets, they had done something that confused every military analyst in the galaxy. They had reprogrammed civilian communication networks to broadcast images from New Busan. Every hegemony citizen now saw what their military had done to human children. More importantly, they saw the human response. Not random violence, but calculated, precise, unstoppable revenge. President Yoon Ha-na received a communication request from Vorthak himself. The hegemony leader appeared on her screen, his reptilian features showing what humans had learned to recognize as alien confusion. "President Yoon Ha-na," Vorthak began, "perhaps we have been hasty. The Krill hegemony is prepared to withdraw from human space. We can discuss terms for peace." Yoon Ha-na looked at him for a long moment. Behind her, images from New Busan played on screens throughout the room. Burned schools, dead children, melted hospitals. "No," she said simply, and ended the transmission. Lieutenant Choi Tae-un had been assigned to intelligence gathering, intercepting hegemony communications across dozens of star systems. What she discovered made her blood run cold, but not with fear, with satisfaction. Other alien species were quietly withdrawing their support from the hegemony. Trade agreements were being canceled, diplomatic ties were being cut. The galaxy was abandoning the Krill to face humanity alone. She brought her findings to Admiral Song Woo-bin. "Sir, it appears that other species are beginning to remember why they feared humans in the first place." Song Woo-bin nodded grimly. "Good. Let Them remember. Let them all remember what happens when someone threatens human children. Ambassador Zelnoth of the Hegemony tried desperately to contact other alien powers, seeking allies in their war against humanity. But every response was the same: polite refusal and urgent suggestions that the Hegemony surrender immediately. 1. Response came from the Crystalline Confederation, humanity's oldest allies. The Krill Hegemony has awakened something that the galaxy has worked for centuries to keep sleeping. We will not stand between humans and their justice. Dr. Park So-min worked day and night in her laboratory, developing new weapons based on captured Hegemony technology. But these were not ordinary weapons. She was creating biological agents that would target only Hegemony DNA, viruses that would make their soldiers sick and afraid but would not kill them quickly. Why not just destroy them? Asked her assistant. Park So-min looked up from her work, her kind face now carrying an expression of cold calculation. Because dead enemies cannot suffer, cannot remember, cannot warn others about what happens when you murder human children. Commander Lee Jae-wook's forces had grown to include hundreds of ships and thousands of human soldiers. They no longer fought traditional battles. Instead, they appeared without warning in Hegemony space, struck with surgical precision, and vanished before enemy reinforcements could arrive. But they were not trying to capture territory. They were hunting specific targets: Hegemony leaders, military commanders, anyone who had participated in the planning of the new Busan massacre. One by one, these individuals simply disappeared from their ships, their homes, their command posts. The few who were found alive bore messages carved into their flesh. Remember New Busan? Elder Quindar watched the war's progress from his ancient ship, feeling a mixture of sadness and vindication. He had tried to warn the Hegemony, tried to make them understand the danger they were courting. Now it was too late. He sent a message to the other elder species. The humans have awakened. We must prepare for what comes next. Captain Kim Tae-ho returned to Earth to report to Admiral Song Woo-bin. His ship carried the few thousand survivors from New Busan, human families who had lost everything but their lives. Admiral, Kim Tae-ho said as he stood in the command center, the survivors want to join the military. All of them, even the children old enough to serve. Song Woo-bin was not surprised. What do they want to do? They want to make sure this never happens to any human family again. They want to be part of the force that teaches the galaxy why our children are not acceptable targets. Song Woo-bin looked out at the growing fleet of human ships, each one carrying soldiers who had volunteered not for conquest but for justice. The galaxy had forgotten the most important lesson about humanity. Humans did not fight for territory or resources or political power. They fought for the right of their children to sleep safely at night. They fought for the principle that innocence should be protected. They fought for the idea that some things were worth any sacrifice to defend. The Krill Hegemony had given humanity a choice: accept the murder of their children, or show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when their most basic values were threatened. The Hegemony was about to learn that humanity had never been very good at accepting unacceptable choices. Dr. Park So-min stood in her laboratory, looking at the vial of clear liquid in her hands. It looked like water, but it contained something that would have horrified her just months ago. She had successfully reverse-engineered Hegemony biotechnology to create a targeted plague that would affect only their species. The disease would not kill quickly. Instead, it would cause fever, weakness, and most importantly, constant nightmares filled with images from New Busan. Every Hegemony soldier infected would dream of human children crying for help. Admiral Song Woo-bin entered the laboratory, his face showing the weight of the decisions they now faced. Doctor, the Galactic Council is demanding we stop development of biological weapons. They say it violates the treaties of civilized warfare. Park So-min looked at him with eyes that had lost their warmth. Admiral, they chose the level of warfare when they murdered our children. We are simply responding in kind. She held up the vial. This weapon will save human lives by making Hegemony soldiers too sick to fight effectively. Would the Council prefer we use nuclear weapons instead? Song Woo-bin took the vial. Deploy it. Target their military bases first. Captain Kim Tae-ho had been given command of the hunting fleets, groups of ships that no longer followed traditional military tactics. His orders were simple: make the hegemony afraid to sleep at night. His ships appeared without warning throughout hegemony space. But instead of destroying planets or capturing territory, they did something that confused alien military experts across the galaxy. They targeted infrastructure with surgical precision. On the world of Krex Prime, human forces reprogrammed the planetary defense satellites to target the planet's own military installations. When hegemony forces tried to shut down the satellites, they found messages written in perfect hegemony script. Your children are safe. Ours were not. Remember New Busan. The psychological warfare was devastating. Hegemony civilians began to understand that humans could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. More frightening, they realized that humans were choosing not to kill them. Yet Commander Lee Jae-wook studied reports from across the battle zone. Human forces were implementing something called Scorched Galaxy protocols. Instead of destroying hegemony worlds completely, they were carefully dismantling the technological infrastructure needed for space travel. Power plants were disabled, not destroyed. Spaceports were rendered unusable, but civilians were left unharmed. Manufacturing facilities that built weapons were converted to produce medical supplies, which were then distributed to hegemony civilians with notes: humanity protects the innocent, even from their own governments. The message was clear. The hegemony would survive, but they would never threaten anyone again. General Kang Min-ho coordinated the overall strategy from Earth's military command center. He was an old soldier who had hoped never to see warfare on this scale again. But the massacre at New Busan had awakened something in humanity that even he found frightening. Sir, his aide reported, hegemony forces are massing for a counterattack. Intelligence suggests they plan to strike at Earth itself. Kang Min-ho smiled grimly. Let them come. It's time they learned what happens when you threaten the human homeworld. Supreme Commander Vorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, preparing to lead the largest military force the hegemony had ever assembled. 1 million ships carrying 50 million hegemony soldiers were heading toward Earth. Surely, he thought, the humans would negotiate when faced with such overwhelming force. War. Chief Krextel stood beside him, his reptilian features showing confidence. Supreme Commander, no species can stand against such numbers. The humans will surrender when they see our fleet. Vorthak nodded, but privately he wondered why other alien species had warned him against this attack. The Crystalline Confederation had sent a message that puzzled him. You are about to discover why ancient species fear the sleeping humans. As the hegemony fleet approached Earth's solar system, they found it strangely quiet. Human colonies on Mars and the outer planets had been evacuated. The massive orbital defense platforms around Earth seemed almost empty. Sir, reported Krextal, our sensors show minimal human fleet presence. Perhaps they have already fled. But Vorthak felt uneasy. In every previous battle, humans had appeared where they were least expected. The absence of opposition felt like a trap. Lieutenant Choi Da-eun piloted her fighter through the asteroid belt, watching the approaching hegemony fleet through her ship's sensors. Around her, hidden among the rocks and debris, thousands of human ships waited in perfect silence. The plan was simple in its brutality. The hegemony fleet would be allowed to approach Earth, where they would find themselves surrounded by human forces that had been waiting for them. It would not be a battle. It would be an execution. Engineer Han Yu-jin monitored the trap from her position on the command ship. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, installing new weapon systems that would turn the hegemony's own numbers against them. When the alien fleet reached Earth's orbit, they found the planet's defense systems apparently shut down. Encouraged, they moved into attack formation, preparing to bombard the human homeworld. That was when the trap was sprung. Human ships erupted from hiding places throughout the solar system. They came from behind asteroids, from within gas clouds, from positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected. The hegemony fleet found itself surrounded by an enemy that had spent months preparing for this exact moment. But the humans did not simply attack. Instead, they broadcast a message on all frequencies spoken by President Yoon Hana herself. You came to our home to murder our families. You will learn why that was a mistake. The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. It was a demonstration of what humanity could do when they stopped holding back. Hegemony ships found their own weapons turning against them. Their communication systems played recordings from New Busan on endless repeat. Their navigation computers were reprogrammed to show images of human children. Within 6 hours, the million-ship hegemony fleet was reduced to scattered wreckage floating in Earth's space. But the humans had been careful. They captured escape pods, rescued survivors, and treated wounded enemies with the same medical care they gave their own soldiers. Vorthak found himself aboard a human medical ship, his wounds being treated by Dr. Park Soman herself. As she worked, she spoke quietly to him. Supreme Commander, you ordered the murder of children. By the laws of your own species, this makes you a war criminal. By human laws, it makes you something worse. Vorthak struggled to speak. What do you want from us? Park So-min's hands were gentle as she treated his injuries, but her voice was ice. We want to make sure this never happens again. To anyone. Ever. Elder Quindar observed the battle from a safe distance, his ancient mind processing what he had witnessed. The humans had not simply defeated the hegemony fleet. They had done so while demonstrating complete control over the level of destruction they chose to inflict. He sent a message to the other elder species. The humans have shown restraint even in their anger. This makes them more dangerous than we feared. They are not driven by rage alone, but by a cold calculation of justice that may be unstoppable. Admiral Song Woo-bin stood in the ruins of the hegemony fleet, watching as human crews worked to rescue survivors and tend to the wounded. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Sir, asked Captain Kim Tae-ho, what are your instructions regarding the hegemony homeworld? Song Woo-bin looked out at Earth, peaceful and blue in the distance. Somewhere down there, children were playing in parks, going to school, laughing with their friends. The same things that children on New Busan would never do again. We go to their homeworld, he said finally. Not to destroy it, but to make sure they understand what they have awakened. The hegemony will learn that there are consequences for murdering human children. They will learn that those consequences last forever. President Yoon Hana addressed the Galactic Council from Earth's orbital station, with the wreckage of the hegemony fleet visible through the windows behind her. Representatives from dozens of species listened in awed silence. For 300 years, she said, humanity has chosen to be your protectors rather than your conquerors. We have chosen mercy over justice, cooperation over domination. The Krill hegemony tested whether these choices came from weakness. She gestured toward the floating debris that had once been a million-ship invasion fleet. They have learned that they did not. Now we must decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in. One where the murder of children brings swift and terrible justice, or one where such crimes are forgotten in the name of political convenience. The chamber remained silent. Every alien present understood that they were witnessing a fundamental change in galactic politics. Humanity was no longer asking for a place in the galactic community. They were defining what that community would become. Commander Lee Jae-wook prepared his forces for the final phase of the war. They would travel to the hegemony homeworld, not as conquerors, but as teachers. The lesson they would teach was simple. Some lines should never be crossed. As his ships prepared to depart, he thought about the children of New Busan and about all the children across the galaxy who would sleep safely because of what humanity was about to do. Commander Lee Jae-wook stood on the bridge of his flagship as it entered the Krill homeworld system. Around him, 1,000 human ships moved in perfect formation toward the planet where the hegemony's civilization had begun. But these were not ships coming to destroy. They were ships coming to teach a lesson that would last forever. The Scorched Galaxy protocols had been approved by President Yoon Hana herself. Human forces would not glass planets or commit genocide. Instead, they would carefully dismantle the hegemony's ability to ever threaten anyone again. Every spaceport would be disabled. Every weapons factory would be converted to produce medical supplies. Every military academy would become a school where alien children learned about the consequences of harming innocents. Supreme Commander Vorthak watched from his prison cell aboard the human command ship as his homeworld grew larger on the screen. He had expected humans to destroy his planet in revenge for New Busan. Instead, they had done something more terrifying. They had shown mercy to civilians while ensuring that hegemony military power would never exist again. Why? He asked Dr. Park So-min when she came to check on his medical condition. Why do you not simply kill us all? Park So-min looked at him with eyes that held no warmth. Because dead enemies cannot remember, cannot teach their children about the price of evil. Your species will live, but you will spend the next 1,000 years learning how to be worthy of that gift. On the hegemony homeworld, panic spread through the government districts as human ships took position in orbit. But instead of bombardment, something else began to happen. Every military installation simply stopped working. Weapons powered down. Communication systems switched to broadcasting human educational programs about the value of protecting children. War Chief Krextal tried desperately to organize resistance, but found that human forces had somehow disabled every piece of military equipment on the planet without harming a single civilian. When he tried to contact other hegemony worlds, he discovered that the same thing was happening across their entire empire. General Kang Min-ho coordinated the operation from his command center on Earth. Reports flowed in from across hegemony, space. Military bases converted to hospitals. Weapons factories retooled to produce toys for children. Propaganda centers transformed into libraries filled with human literature about peace and justice. Sir, reported his aide, the hegemony government is requesting terms for surrender. Kang Min-ho's expression did not change. Tell them that surrender is no longer an option. They chose their level of warfare when they murdered our children. Now they will live with the consequences of that choice. Dr. Park So-min had made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the wreckage of a hegemony research facility, her team had found evidence that the New Busan massacre was even worse than they had known. The hegemony had not just killed human civilians. They had captured some alive for biological experiments. Human children had been used as test subjects to see how long different species could survive in pain. The discovery broke something fundamental: inhuman restraint. President Yoon Ha-na authorized the use of weapons that the human military had classified as never use unless facing extinction. Engineer Han Yu-jin worked in absolute secrecy on Project Prometheus, a technology that represented the darkest possibilities of human science. It was not a weapon that destroyed stars. It was something more subtle and terrifying. It could gradually increase the radiation output of a star, making entire solar systems uninhabitable over the course of decades. The weapon was not designed to kill quickly. It was designed to force entire civilizations to abandon their homeworlds and live as refugees, carrying the memory of their crimes with them forever. Are you certain about this? Admiral Song Woo-bin asked as he reviewed the weapon specifications. Han Yu-jin's young face showed no emotion. Sir, they used our children as test subjects. This weapon will ensure that their children grow up knowing the cost of such evil. It will take 40 years for the radiation to become deadly. Enough time for multiple generations to understand why their species can never be trusted with power again. Captain Kim Tae-ho led the final assault on the hegemony's secret research facilities. What his teams found there would haunt human soldiers for generations. Laboratories where human children had been dissected while still alive. Recording equipment that had preserved their screams for scientific analysis. When news of the discoveries reached Earth, something changed in human society itself. The gentle, protective nature that had defined humanity's role in the galaxy was replaced by something colder and more terrifying. Humans would still protect the innocent, but they would never again show mercy to those who harmed children. Elder Quindar attempted to intervene, contacting President Yoon Ha-na directly. The ancient being appeared on her communication screen, his insectoid features showing what humans had learned to recognize as extreme concern. President Yoon Ha-na, the elder species implore you to reconsider your current course. What the hegemony did was terrible, but what you are planning will remake the very nature of galactic civilization. Yoon Hana's response was quiet, but final. Elder Quindar, you warned us that humans do not know how to surrender. But you failed to warn the hegemony of something even more important. Humans do not know how to forgive crimes against children. The ancient alien's compound eyes dimmed. We understand now why our ancestors feared your species. You have the capacity to be more terrible than any enemy, because you weaponize your own morality. Lieutenant Choi Da-un delivered humanity's final ultimatum to the remnants of the hegemony government. The terms were unlike anything seen in galactic history. Complete surrender was no longer enough. The hegemony would accept human oversight of their civilization for the next 1,000 years, or face the activation of Project Prometheus. Vorthak, now the nominal leader of his broken species, read the terms with growing horror. You would destroy our sun? Murder billions of innocents? Choi Da-un's voice was steady as she replied. We would make your star uninhabitable over 40 years, giving you time to evacuate. Your species would survive, but you would spend the rest of your existence as refugees, carrying the memory of why you can never be trusted with power again. She paused, letting the weight of the choice settle on him. Alternatively, you can accept human guardianship. Your children will be educated by human teachers. Your government will operate under human oversight. Your military will never exist again, but you will have homes, and your children will grow up learning the value of protecting innocence instead of destroying it. Vorthak realized that humanity had redefined what surrender meant. They were not offering mercy. They were offering a choice between exile and education, between wandering the galaxy as refugees or living under permanent human supervision. Ambassador, Zelnoth made one final attempt to rally support from other alien species, pleading with the Galactic Council to intervene against human extremism. The response from the Crystalline Confederation was typical of what he received. The hegemony awakened humanity's capacity for total war. We will not stand between them and their justice. Perhaps your species will learn wisdom in their exile, or under human guidance. Dr. Park Soman stood in her laboratory, looking at the completed Project Prometheus device. It was smaller than she had expected, barely larger than a briefcase. Such a small thing to hold the power to make entire star systems uninhabitable. Doctor, asked her assistant, do you think they will choose exile or supervision? Park So-min thought of the human children who had died screaming in hegemony laboratories. I hope they choose supervision. Exile would be kinder than they deserve, but supervision means their children might learn to be better than their parents. She sealed the device in its containment unit. Either way, the galaxy will remember that there are consequences for harming human children, consequences that last for generations. President Yoon Ha-na prepared to address the galaxy one final time. The choice had been offered to the hegemony. Now the entire galactic community would learn what humanity had become in response to unforgivable crimes. The gentle protectors who had once offered friendship to all species had been transformed into something more terrifying. Judges who would decide which civilizations deserved to exist independently and which needed to be guided away from the darkness that lived in every intelligent heart. The Krill hegemony had broken the oldest rule in the galaxy. Now humanity would write new rules, and those rules would be enforced with the same cold precision that had dismantled the hegemony's military power. The age of human mercy was ending. The age of human justice was about to begin. Supreme Commander Vorthak knelt in the ruins of his former command center, watching as human engineers worked to convert his planet's weapons factories into schools. The choice had been made. Rather than face exile among the stars, the hegemony had accepted human supervision. They would live, but they would never again govern themselves. Captain Kim Tae-ho oversaw the transformation of former hegemony space. It was delicate work, removing a civilization's ability to make war while ensuring that civilians could live normal lives. Human administrators worked alongside hegemony officials, teaching them new ways to organize society around protection, rather than conquest. Sir, reported his aide, the hegemony children are responding well to the new education programs. They seem eager to learn about human concepts of justice and mercy. Kim Tae-ho nodded. Good. Perhaps in a few generations, their species will produce leaders worthy of independence. Until then, we guide them away from the darkness their parents embraced. Dr. Park So-min had traded her weapons laboratory for something very different. A medical research facility where human and hegemony scientists worked together to heal the psychological damage left by the war. The hegemony survivors suffered from guilt and shame over what their government had done. The human survivors carried rage and grief that threatened to consume them. The healing will take generations, she reported to Admiral Song Woo-bin. But it is possible. Both species can learn from this tragedy if we have the patience to teach and the wisdom to forgive when forgiveness has been earned. Song Woo-bin looked out at the former hegemony homeworld, where human and alien children now played together in parks that had once been military training grounds. Doctor, do you think we did the right thing? Sometimes I wonder if we became the very thing we fought against. Park So-min considered the question carefully. Admiral, we became what we needed to become to protect the innocent. The measure of our actions will be what the galaxy becomes because of them. President Yoon Hana stood before the Galactic Council, addressing representatives from every known species. Behind her, holographic displays showed the transformation taking place in former hegemony space. Weapons factories had become toy manufacturers. Military academies taught children about protecting the weak. Propaganda centers broadcast stories about heroes who saved lives rather than took them. The Krill hegemony chose to test whether human kindness came from weakness, she said. They learned that it did not. Now we offer the galaxy a choice. You can join us in building a civilization that protects children, or you can discover what happens to those who threaten them. Elder Quindar spoke for the Council of Ancients. His insectoid features showed a mixture of respect and fear. President Yoon Hana, the elder species, accept humanity's leadership in matters of galactic security. We have seen what you are capable of when aroused to anger. We prefer to see what you can accomplish when motivated by hope. The new compact was signed by every major species in the galaxy. It was a simple document with a simple principle. Any civilization that deliberately targeted children would face immediate human intervention. The terms of that intervention would depend on the severity of the crime, but would always be proportional and final. Commander Lee Jae-wook established the Human Peacekeeping Force, drawing volunteers from across human space. These were not soldiers. In the traditional sense, they were teachers, engineers, doctors, and administrators whose job was to prevent conflicts before they began and to guide recovering civilizations toward better choices. We are not conquerors, he told his officers. We are gardeners pruning away the diseased parts of galactic civilization so that healthy growth can flourish. The first test of the new order came when the Razor Syndicate, a criminal organization, attempted to enslave a population of peaceful farmers. The human response was swift and overwhelming. Within hours, syndicate leaders found themselves in human custody, their organization dismantled, and their victims under human protection. But the syndicate criminals were not executed or imprisoned forever. Instead, they were sent to work rebuilding the communities they had damaged, supervised by human peacekeepers who taught them about the value of honest labor and service to others. Engineer Han Yu-jin had dismantled Project Prometheus, converting its technology into something more constructive, a stellar engineering system that could actually extend the life of dying stars. The weapon that could have destroyed solar systems became a tool that preserved them. We choose to be builders rather than destroyers, she explained to a group of young human engineers. But we keep the knowledge of how to destroy so that those who would harm the innocent know we have the capability to stop them. Lieutenant Choi Da-eun commanded humanity's intelligence services, monitoring the galaxy for signs of emerging threats to civilians. Her network of agents and analysts worked to identify dangerous ideologies before they could spread, dangerous technologies before they could be weaponized, and dangerous leaders before they could gain power. Prevention is always better than cure, she reported to General Kang Min-ho. We stop wars before they start, genocides before they begin, and tyrants before they can harm anyone. General Kang Min-ho stood in the rebuilt city of New Seoul on New Busan, now a memorial and training ground where representatives from across the galaxy came to learn about the consequences of harming innocents. The city had been rebuilt exactly as it was before the massacre, but now it served a different purpose. Young beings from hundreds of species walked through museums that showed the history of the war, the choices that led to tragedy, and the price that was paid by those who chose evil over good. At the center of the memorial stood a simple monument with the names of every human child who had died, surrounded by playgrounds where alien children now learned to play together in peace. "Why do you show us this?" asked a young Krill student, one of the first generation born under human supervision. Kang Min-ho knelt down to the child's eye level. "Because we want you to understand that choices have consequences. Your people's leaders chose to hurt children, and that choice led to the end of their freedom. We want you to make better choices when you grow up." The child nodded solemnly. "Will humans always watch over us?" "Until your people prove they can be trusted to watch over themselves," Kang Min-ho replied gently. "That may take many years, but we are patient. We want your species to earn back the right to govern itself by showing that you value the protection of innocence above all else." Admiral Song Woo-bin reviewed reports from across human space. The transformation was working. Crime rates had plummeted as potential criminals understood that human justice was swift and inescapable. Wars between species had virtually ended as everyone understood that conflict which harmed civilians would bring immediate human intervention. But the cost was visible in human society itself. They had become the galaxy's police force, its judges, its guardians. Children who should have grown up playing in parks instead trained to be peacekeepers. Scientists who should have been exploring the mysteries of the universe instead developed new ways to monitor and control dangerous civilizations. "Have we saved the galaxy or conquered it?" he asked President Yoon Ha-na during a private meeting. Yoon Ha-na looked older than her years, bearing the weight of decisions that affected trillions of lives. "Admiral, we have become what the galaxy needed us to become. Whether that makes us saviors or conquerors will be judged by history." Elder Quindar updated the ancient warnings that his species maintained for new civilizations entering galactic society. The old warning had been simple: never wage total war against the Earthborn. The new warning was more complex and more terrifying. Never threaten human children, for humans have learned to weaponize their own compassion. They will not destroy you in anger. They will remake you in sorrow, teaching your children to be better than you were while ensuring that your species never again has the power to choose evil over good. Dr. Park So-min stood in her garden on Earth, watching her own children play with young beings from a dozen different species. These children would grow up in a galaxy where the strong protected the weak, where conflicts were resolved through mediation rather than violence, where the idea of deliberately harming innocents was so unthinkable that most beings could not even imagine it. "Was it worth it?" asked her husband, a former soldier who had fought in the war against the hegemony. Park So-min watched a young Krill child teach a human child how to properly plant earth flowers in alien soil. "Ask me in 100 years, when these children are leading their species toward a better future. Ask me when the galaxy has forgotten that war was ever an acceptable way to settle disputes." President Yoon Ha-na prepared for her final address to the Galactic Council before retiring from office. She had led humanity through its transformation from protectors to enforcers, from friends to judges. Her successor would inherit a galaxy at peace, but also a galaxy that lived under the constant awareness that human vigilance was the price of that peace. "We did not choose to become the galaxy's guardians," she would say in her farewell speech. "That choice was made for us when the Krill hegemony decided that human children were acceptable targets. We responded as humans always respond to existential threats. We adapted, we innovated,